In a neighborhood not far from where he lived, young Stephen Nama came across something surprising. An old car that someone he knew and cared about was using as their makeshift home. He hadn't seen this person for many years, but fate brought them back into his life that night. As Stephen approached to investigate, he uncovered a heartbreaking truth that deeply saddened him. Today, we'll share a touching yet sadly tragic story. To understand it, we need to go back to the moment when our main character, a retired teacher who had a successful career, faced a life-altering nightmare. Joseph Villarreal was a wonderful school teacher all his life. Even though things weren't always easy, he found true happiness in teaching children. Nothing delighted him more than seeing his students' faces light up when they learned something new or got good grades on exams they had worked hard for. Being a teacher in Mexico didn't pay much, far from what we might consider a good salary. But Jose never let that bother him. He was content with what he had. What mattered most to him was that his students enjoyed learning and gained knowledge that would help them in their future careers. He believed true wealth lay in education and ideas, not in possessions. So Jose led a simple life with his wife and children and never felt like he lacked anything. His teaching career was long and successful. Even today, many students remember him fondly for all he did. But, as with everything in life, retirement eventually came. At nearly 75 years old, Jose was one of the longest-serving teachers of his time. It was hard for him to leave the classroom and say goodbye to his students, whom he cherished. But he knew it was time to retire and focus more on taking care of his family. He completed the necessary paperwork, arranged his retirement, and secured a modest pension to live a quiet life. However, the rest and financial breathing space provided by retirement were short-lived as Villarreal soon found himself surrounded by debts that swallowed up his savings. His wife, Clara Montesinos, whom he met while they were both in high school, and to whom he had been married for over 50 years, became seriously ill with liver cancer. "I'm sorry to have to give you this news, Mr. and Mrs. Villarreal," the doctor revealed. "Your wife is suffering from advanced liver cancer and requires urgent treatment. We don't know if we'll be able to save her life, but if we don't try and act quickly, we'll have no choice," the doctor explained to him and his wife. Jose had never felt sadder and more alone than he did that day in the doctor's office. He had just retired and had so many plans to spend time with his wife. She always understood his dedication to his work and never got upset when plans were postponed because of it. But just when they finally had the chance to be together without any interruptions, fate intervened once again, presenting them with the toughest challenge of their lives. When Jose returned home, his wife told him, "I don't want to undergo treatment, Jose. I'm too old and we have no money. I can't bear to see you sacrifice yourself to save me, especially knowing the treatment might not work. Please don't do this for me." She was upset, her hands trembling as she spoke. Jose couldn't bear the thought of life without his wife. He was determined to care for her no matter what it cost. "Don't say that again, Clara," Jose pleaded. "It breaks my heart to hear you talk like that. Do you think I would give up and let you die without trying everything I can? Do you think I care more about money than saving your life? I don't want that at all. Life would lose its meaning if I lost you, so money doesn't matter." Joseph was usually a kind and gentle person, but the situation overwhelmed him completely. The thought of losing his wife filled him with despair and pain. "Okay, calm down. Forget what you said," Jose reassured her. "I don't know what I'm feeling right now. I've been so confused for hours. I'm scared, Jose. The doctor said I might only have a few months left. It's all too much," Clara replied, wrapping her arms around him from behind as they sat together. "I'll never leave your side, Clara. I'll take care of you until the end, even if it's the last thing I do, I promise," Jose told her, much calmer. They stayed in each other's arms for hours. That night was probably the saddest and longest of their lives. The week after the diagnosis, the couple accepted the conditions that their doctor gave them and started the treatment to try to reduce the tumor that Clara had in her liver. The first months of the chemotherapy treatment were very hard, but Jose's wife managed to overcome it. However, when they returned to the doctor's office to find out the results of the treatment, they were not expecting good news. "I'm sorry to say the chemo didn't work and the tumors barely shrank in size. We'll have to do more chemo and add radiotherapy to try shrinking the tumor aggressively. They'll weaken her a lot, but it's our best shot," their doctor sadly informed them, trying to stay optimistic. Jose couldn't see any silver lining and felt more sad and angry. "We'll do whatever it takes, doctor. We'll keep going," Jose replied, holding back tears in front of his wife, who needed him to be strong. Jose never told his wife he couldn't afford her medical bills anymore. He knew she'd stop treatment if she knew they were out of money, so he kept it a secret and reassured her with small lies. Jose only cared about her well-being. When more bills came, he sold his house and started living in his car to pay them. It was a risky move for the elderly professor, but it was the only way he could keep up with his wife's treatment. Clara had been weak after weeks of chemo and radiotherapy in the hospital, needing constant care. Jose didn't mention his sacrifices, visiting her daily to check on her progress and encourage her. At night, he returned to his car, trying to make it comfortable with blankets and pillows he took from home. Weeks passed, and despite his hardships, Jose kept his struggles to himself. He felt increasingly down, his body aching, nights cold despite blankets, barely eating or drinking junk food. And when he visited the hospital, the news from the doctors treating his wife never brought any relief. The doctors said the treatment is slower than expected, but the tumor is in remission. Soon, they can remove it with surgery. Right now, your wife needs to rest from chemo sessions in the hospital. Her body can't handle more treatment yet, the doctors explained 8 months after starting treatment. For the first time, there was hope, and Jose had a reason to smile. But Jose's happiness didn't last long. When he returned to his car with the medical bills, he saw how much he had to pay. It made his stomach tighten, and he couldn't sleep that night. His entire pension went to his wife's treatments. His pension wasn't enough for cancer treatment costs in Mexico City, so he lived in his car day and night trying to save money. He wanted his wife to have everything she needed for her cancer treatments. But the truth is that, although elder Villarreal assumed his responsibility as a husband stoically, his body began to grow very tired. During the day, he felt too weak to do any kind of activity. Although he felt young and had always taken good care of himself, Jose was almost 77 years old, and living in a car with hardly any food and sleeping only a few hours a night was not ideal for a person of his age. He needed to put an end to this situation as soon as possible. He had no idea how to do that, though. Luckily, fate had one last surprise in store for him that would completely change his luck and help him face the final stage of his wife's illness. An unexpected encounter during a cold winter night would change the life of the affectionate professor forever, being precisely one of his former students, the one in charge of bringing joy back into his life. Jose's former student was Stephen Nava, a young financier who had the good fortune to know the professor during his childhood and whom he had fond memories of. One particularly cold winter night, Nava was walking home after parking his car a few meters further. While walking, his curiosity piqued when he spotted a small, worn-out vehicle in which someone seemed to have fallen asleep in the front seat, covered with a couple of old, dirty blankets. "My God, there's someone sleeping in there. How can that be? It looks like a pretty old person. What shame," Stephen said to himself as he slowly approached. Without knowing quite why he was doing so, Nava decided to approach Villarreal's vehicle to check that the person inside was okay, unaware of the profound impact this encounter would have on his life and that of his former teacher. To Nava's astonishment, the occupant of the car turned out to be none other than his former school teacher, Mr. Villarreal, affectionately called Mr. V. The shock of seeing his respected mentor living in such poverty weighed heavily on Nava's heart. The conditions in which Villarreal was forced to live were devastating, a reality that struck a chord with the compassionate young man. He was overcome with emotion and decided to knock hard on the glass to wake Jose up and ask him what had happened to him and if there was anything he could do to help. "Mr. Jose, is that you? Can you hear me? What are you doing here? Wake up, Mr. Villarreal. Can you hear me? Hello," he shouted from the other side of the glass until the old man woke up startled. At first, Mr. Joseph felt very embarrassed to have been discovered living in his car. But after several minutes talking to the kind Stephen, of whom he had fond memories from his student years, the old man was grateful to have someone to talk to about his problems and lighten the load he'd been carrying alone for months. As they talked, Villarreal shared his hardships with tears in his eyes. He confessed that he lived in his car because he needed every penny to pay for his wife's cancer treatments. He couldn't afford anything else, so he sacrificed his own comfort. Reflecting on their school days together, Nava remembered how Mr. V had supported and guided him. He praised Villarreal, saying, "You're a hero for risking everything to save your wife. I admire you so much. You're not alone anymore. I'll help you, and together we'll find a solution." He offered him coffee and a sandwich from a nearby shop. Initially reluctant to accept help and feeling ashamed of his situation, Villarreal eventually agreed to let Stephen assist him. Exhausted and in need of support, he realized he couldn't manage alone. True to his word, Stephen rallied support for Jose, and soon the community, including Mayor Warren, gathered at the Fontana Senior Community Center to celebrate and help. Among them was Melissa Lopez, another former student who remembered Mr. V's kindness and energy in the classroom fondly. Everyone recognized him because when he came into class, he always had such good energy and was so sweet, Lopez reflected in an interview for the local newspaper that was covering the event. The story of the teacher, better known among his students as Mr. V, echoed the sentiments of many others whose lives had been affected by Villarreal's selfless dedication to education and who wanted to lend him a hand at such a delicate time in his life. Nava was deeply affected by the heartbreaking situation, saying to the media, "Every morning I saw him sorting through his trunk at 5 a.m. and I knew I had to act. Fueled by determination, he launched a GoFundMe campaign aiming for $15,000. His initiative resonated widely, surpassing expectations with a substantial amount raised. As Villarreal's 77th birthday approached, Nava organized a celebratory event at the Fontana Senior Community Center. Over 100 attendees, including many grateful former students, gathered to applaud Villarreal and share joyful memories. As soon as the party began, Nava stepped forward on stage holding a check that would forever change Villarreal's life and that of his wife. The proceeds have been $27,000. This represents the community's gratitude and admiration for the retired professor. Overwhelmed by the magnitude of the moment, Villarreal's eyes filled with tears of disbelief and gratitude. My initial thought was, am I dreaming? I still can't get over this experience, the elderly man confessed as the press approached him to immortalize the happy moment. During this happy event, Villarreal promised himself and those present solemnly. Encouraged by the new hope and support he received, he pledged to give back the love and kindness he had received. Right now, I feel a strong duty to do a lot for the world. I believe I can make a difference, and I'm determined to find a way, he said, recognizing how much teachers influence the future. Nava, speaking emotionally, reflected deeply. We don't value teachers enough, and that's something we need to change. Today, we're returning some of the love and dedication they've given us, honoring a man who dedicated his life to teaching without expecting anything in return. Thank you, Mr. Villarreal. You're a true hero. After that day, and after expressing gratitude to everyone for their support, Mr. Villarreal no longer had to live in his car. He managed to pay off all of his overdue medical bills and cover the remaining costs for his wife's cancer treatments. A year and a half after her diagnosis, Clara was completely free of cancer and left the hospital with her beloved husband by her side. With the donations received, Mr. Joseph purchased a new house where he would spend his remaining years with his wife, enjoying what he loved most, teaching. While not full-time, he spent a few days a week mentoring young people who needed help with their studies, guiding them towards their future careers. This was his way of thanking everyone who helped him educate the next generation with the same love and dedication he had always shown. What are your thoughts on Stephen's gesture towards his teacher? Have you ever experienced a similar event? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I hope you like this video. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.